One of the things that I think the show also does well, on top of everything I just talked about, is how it makes seemingly small things so truly epic. For example, so many of the Japanese characters, particularly, the lords and their families, have a very specific way that they talk to each other. It's often polite, speaking with honor in mind. Even if they throw in like veiled threats and insults, it's all done with, very polite, smiles, if you will. They're very in control of themselves. So when we do get a scene, for instance, like when John Blackthorne reveals something the Portuguese are doing in Japan, they have a moment when they do reveal their emotions and shock, and it's incredibly impactful. They're like,
what the fuck is this bullshit, and who the fuck are you?
We live in a time right now where one could argue that television is producing some of the best narrative-driven content in entertainment at the moment. We've been living in a post-Sopranos age for 25 years as of this point, and we've gotten some incredible TV shows in that time. I mean, from The Wire to Breaking Bad to Succession most recently, to amazing animated shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender and Arcane. Some of the best entertainment that I myself have consumed over the last few years can be found on the small screen and should be honestly celebrated and praised consistently. And while some filmmakers dismiss the medium and its positive impact, most recently directors like Denis Villeneuve of Dune 2 fame, I think television is honestly outpacing movies to a degree when it comes to providing captivating narratives, interesting dialogue, and really well-rounded characters. So when I started hearing about the miniseries Shogun and how the show's creators of Rachel Kondo and Justin Marks were promising a historical epic with a focus on characters, but also featuring just immaculate production design, I became like very interested, really interested, in this project and started kind of following it. And, I wanted to watch, those first 2 episodes just as quickly as possible. But, before getting into the nitty-gritty details of this show, I do want to provide you guys with a bit of context for the series. Set in Japan, the year 1600, a powerful Japanese lord is fighting for his life and position as his many enemies unite against him. But when a mysterious European ship is marooned at a nearby village, many secrets are revealed. So, just to state this at the top, I was not fully aware of the history of Shogun before I started watching the series. But I've come to learn the show is actually based off of James Clavell's beloved 1975 novel of the same name. And it was originally adapted in the 80s. Matter of fact, I think it was in 1980 for television. And it went on to like great critical and rating success, and it won just numerous awards, during that time. It's a piece of historical fiction incorporating real world events, fictionalized versions of certain people whose like names have been changed. Obviously for this work and other adaptations. I've always had a soft spot for historical fiction, especially for novels like The Man in the High Castle or Blood Meridian. So Shogun is, right up my alley. And I'm very happy to tell all of you, after watching the first 2 episodes of the series, that the show is just absolutely incredible so far. It's really, really good. Damn good, I would say. It's very apparent that FX wanted to give this series a cinematic size budget, but at the same time, didn't want to sacrifice that story by truncating it as a film. In terms of the show's production design, it rivals other big budget shows like Game of Thrones or Rome. You feel the scale of this series of it, and the world they've created just feels like so lived in. It also helps that much of the series was actually shot on location in Japan, but they also have some very impressive sets that are so wonderfully detailed. I mean, just across the board, it's absolutely incredible. But as beautiful and as cinematic as the series just obviously looks when you first start watching, even within its first few minutes, it's the story and the characters that got me so invested. This series has a massive cast of people, massive cast of characters, with a number of recognizable actors as well. I would say that the show's two leads are Haruki Sanada and Cosmo Jarvis, who play Lord Yoshii Toranaga and Navigator Sailor John Blackthorne. You know, two people from just two completely different worlds and positions, but their lives and in futures seem to be just so intertwined. The beginning of the show, I think many would recognize Sanada from his numerous Japanese and English language roles over the last several decades. Most recently he was in John Wick. You know, he was in Mortal Kombat, of course. But I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that this is one of the best roles that I've personally seen him in, in quite some time. You know, as Lord Toranaga, we learn he was, very close to the Shogun that recently died. Now there's a power struggle, but that has put him in the crosshairs of a very spiteful and jealous political council that wishes to not only tarnish his reputation, but just destroy him and destroy his very powerful family. His character is incredibly intelligent, wise, but also very manipulative. You know, we follow him and the many characters around him as they try to circumvent like a very trepidatious political situation that could result in a lot of people dying. On the other hand, I'm completely unfamiliar with Cosmo Jarvis, which is a hell of a name, by the way, as John Blackthorne, who is this English privateer who's going after the Spanish and Portuguese, who have like a major foothold in Japan and in nearby areas. He's viewed as a savage by the Japanese, as a barbarian by the Japanese. They often call him barbarian. And he views them the same way, especially when being exposed to their customs. His character is honestly put through the ringer physically and emotionally, psychologically, and is just in a constant state of anxious confusion, since he can barely speak Japanese, at least in these first two episodes. He picks up bits and pieces, a couple of words, but even then he's like, am I saying the right thing? I'm just going to kind of repeat what you're saying, and I hope I don't get my head chopped off or, eviscerated or thrown in jail and then be executed. He's disoriented. And they get that across very well in the series. He's very overwhelmed, and you feel invested in his story, even if you don't exactly know truly why he's there or what his motivations are completely. But you can't help but feel for that character because of just how awful his situation seemingly is at first. His very just presence upsets the balance of so much in this show. From the Japanese lords who are arguing over what should be done with him, to the Portuguese, who have their own plans for Japan. If you like political intrigue mixed with very tense dialogue, dialogue exchanges, then you'll probably just get really invested in this story. And again, you have a massive cast of just very talented people. I'm not going to embarrass myself trying to say all their names, since most of the cast is Japanese and Asian. I mean, I managed to say Haruki Sanada. I'm like, nailed it. I'm like, I had to practice his name before jumping into this review. I had to kind of spell it out a couple times for myself and all right, let me make sure to get this right. But despite that, rest assured, they are delivering fantastic performances across the board, at least so far, along with the English-speaking cast as well. One of the things that I think the show also does well, on top of everything I just talked about, is how it makes seemingly small things so truly epic. For example, so many of the Japanese characters, particularly, the lords and their families, have a very specific way that they talk to each other. It's often polite, speaking with honor in mind, even if they throw in veiled threats and insults. It's all done with, very polite, smiles, if you will. They're very in control of themselves. So when we do get a scene, for instance, like when John Blackthorne reveals something the Portuguese are doing in Japan, they have a moment when they do reveal their emotions and shock, and it's incredibly impactful. They're like,
what the fuck is this bullshit and who the fuck are you?
We hadn't seen them react that way before, and so when that does happen, it's like, oh, this is a really serious situation, and then immediately comes across, and and that was like one of my favorite moments so far from the show. And again, it's just this exchange of dialogue, this information, and like everyone's reaction is so impactful and incredible. And that's why this show, at least so far, is so impressive. It's a wonderful blend of well-written characters, engaging in a fascinating and captivating story with a cinematic backdrop that is just nothing short of fantastic. You know, I will be watching this series on a weekly basis, and perhaps I'll be doing weekly reviews. But if not, I'll definitely do a full series review once all 10 episodes are available. But so far, I got to say, after these first 2 episodes of Shogun, I absolutely love it. This is on the same scale as some other like wonderful historical epics that we've gotten on television and in theaters. I mean, honestly, when I'm thinking about a lot of historical epics that have gone to theater recently, like something like Napoleon, this show like should be used as, at least for right now, these first 2 episodes should be used as a template. Like, hey, this is how you do an incredible historical epic. Don't look at like Ridley Scott's Napoleon, which is garbage. Look at something like this. And look, it was done on the small screen, but yeah, so far I'm absolutely adoring this show. But what about you guys? Have you guys been able to check out Shogun? Have you seen the first 2 episodes? Did you like it as much as I did, or were you more on the negative side? Did you not particularly care for this, or were you maybe turned up with the subtitles? Most of the show, I should say, is subtitled, or were you kind of more mixed on it? Please go ahead and let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.